Hello, everyone, officially. Today we're hosting the webinar called Maximize Your TMS, Build Translation Workflows that meet your business requirements. And today I will be speaking together with Jure. My name is Daria. I am the lead AI engineer here at Intento. Basically, all the innovation in the localization, globalization, AI field comes through my team. And as mentioned, I'm here with Jure, the solution engineer at memoQ. Jure, please kindly introduce yourself as well.
Yes. Hello, my name is Jure. I'm the solution engineer coordinator at memoQ. I'm responsible mainly for the technical things, from the discovery calls to demos, trainings, kickoffs, and quality and Q&A sessions, and everything similar. So it's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Awesome. Pleasure to talk to you as well, of course. And what actually we're going to be talking about today. So the kind of the main agenda, the main talking points that we have revolve around focusing on specific translation requirements and how that delivers better outcomes than just working with generic quality scores. We'll talk about specific post-editing patterns, how to do post-editing, where people do post-editing, and how they work with it, what people basically still post-edit. We'll also talk about practical ways to implement some of those important requirements that clients have, specifically terminology, both through memoQ and with Intento's help. And closer to the end, we'll have a small kind of introduction of our main collaborative use case between memoQ and Intento, which is one of our clients, Amadeus. Basically, it's going to be a really interesting discussion where I feel kind of like you and I are going to give a small, I feel like university days, like a lecture in the university about how to do translation, what people do still translate and post-edit, where they can do it, and how Intento and memoQ work together to make the best translations possible. All right, I think that's a good place to start. First, as mentioned, we will talk about the main talking point, which is the requirements and how to enforce them, both through Intento's workflows and through memoQ. Before we actually start talking about how to enforce those requirements, though, I think it's a good place to start with what are requirements and why we're talking about them. And here, I will share my screen to do that. To those who, sorry, that's not the, what am I? Jure, could you kindly tell me if you see the Maximize Your TMS presentation? Perfect.
I do, yes.
Awesome. So the first thing that I will be talking about is kind of a small introduction to our State of Translation Automation report that Intento does every year. Because it's a good place to explain the requirements and how we work with them. So when working on this year's report, we've noticed that, and this is something that we do for our clients this year as well, we're moving away from the generic translation quality scores to kind of more specifically established requirements that all the clients have, and even in generic translation, this is something that can be kind of explicit or implicit. In our report this year, we worked with kind of the basic requirements and the standard requirements. That's how we separated them into different groups. And we kind of skipped over some advanced requirements that some of our clients might have. When it comes to the basic requirements, of course, you cannot skip just general translation quality. This is still something that is really important to the industry, to the clients. When it comes to general translation quality, this is something that can be measured using different kind of means. Of course, the classic metrics such as edit distance or TER or BLE would still be used for that. But in our case, we mostly use Intento OPA, which is an LLM-based metric. We also look at translation consistency when it comes to client requirements or the report requirements, because this year we worked with full text. And this is, I feel like, something that the industry is slowly moving towards, because the contextual kind of the context of translation is very important. And thankfully to kind of how the industry progresses, working with those with consistency is becoming much easier. When it comes to standard requirements, this year we've taken in terminology, which is kind of one of the main topics of this webinar. And this is a requirement that is kind of crucial to the clients, crucial to the report, crucial to the industry. Terminology is something that is really hard to work with. It has been like this for years, but thankfully, because of several tools like memoQ or like Intento, it's becoming easier this year. We've also taken in tone of voice, and in our report, we've chosen to use formal tone of voice, and we try to enforce formal tone of voice use through NMT and LLMs. And of course, we looked at correct formatting for HTML content, but for different clients, it might be XML formatting, any kind of specific format for translation. As mentioned, we don't usually look at advanced requirements when it comes to kind of the base of requirement specific setup. With advanced requirements, we usually look at inclusivity, idiomaticity, some very specific and kind of fine-grained requirements that are much harder to enforce because usually I think they would be more biased than the basic and the standard requirements. When looking at our report this year, we try to see how those different requirements are actually met by different kind of setups. In this year's report, we looked at the baseline neural machine translation, at the baseline LLMs, so LLMs that use just the simplistic translation prompt. We also looked at the customized NMT and LLMs, and by customization here, we don't mean fine-tuning on a lot of data. Here, by customization, we mean enforcement of terminology and tone of voice specifically. And also this year, we looked at the multi-agent that we've created, and this multi-agent basically takes in the best baseline translation, whether from NMT or LLM, and then that's the first translation agent, then the next agent, who is the reviewer agent, checks whether the requirements that the translation must have were enforced and the translation actually abides by them. And then the last agent in this multi-agent workflow post-stated the translation if any of the requirements were not met. So when looking at the results for different requirements, interestingly, terminology issues were still present, even with those kind of solutions that we did not expect them to be present in, such as LLMs or multi-agent solution. But overall, the quality is generally high. So terminology issues are less present than, for example, 3-5 years ago, which is a great kind of progress in the industry. When looking at tone of voice, a pretty good result from all the models, even more so from LLMs and the multi-agent. NMT solutions, both baseline and customized, usually go towards formal tone of voice just as a kind of as a baseline. That is why they have quite a high result. I feel like if we had informal tone of voice in the report, we might have gotten something different. When it comes to translation consistency, here, understandably, LLMs and the multi-agent solution were the best. NMT solutions sadly don't have a context window the same way LLMs do. They cannot enforce consistency throughout the whole document, as we usually note when translating. And kind of the most positive part of our report when it comes to requirements was how good most solutions support markup and how good they enforce markup. I remember 5 years ago when I just kind of got into industry fully, HTML tags and XML tags were such a pain with NMTs. It was so bad to see. But now we're kind of going towards nearly perfect markup solution. When looking at the results of our state of translation automation report, and by the way, here you can just see kind of the some of the slides from this report. I would definitely suggest you download it from our website. We looked at all the solutions that we could for 11 different language pairs, and we've noted that when it comes to requirement enforcement and just general translation quality, the multi-agent solution that takes in several agents, again, translation, review, and post-editing, perform better than just singular translation solutions, which is understandable. There's kind of more to enforce those requirements than with general models. And probably kind of something that we've expected to see in the series report as well. LLMs follow the multi-agent solution just because it's much easier to enforce different requirements with prompting, with prompt engineering. But still, NFTs are present here as well, such as you can see, Google NMT. So we're talking about requirements. We do have kind of different groups. Some of them are crucial to the client, which is generic translation quality, some terminology, definitely consistency, tone of voice, etc. Some of the requirements are too fine-grained for us to look at this report or with some clients. So why do we actually move to those requirements? Why not just use generic translation scores? Why not kind of leave the requirements to the professionals and just look at TR or edit distance or below? The answer is pretty simple, and we've been kind of researching and working on this for pretty much the whole year. I think pretty much from the start of this year. When looking at just the metrics that we're used to looking at when looking at the quality of translation, we can see that those metrics showcase that LLMs or requirements do not matter. So when we look, for example, at the left graph here, which showcases some kind of client with English into Chinese translation, with raw machine translation, and different post-edited versions of machine translation, post-edited automatically compared to the reference of the translation. We can see that raw machine translation is supposedly the best. So it's the closest to the reference, it's the closest to kind of the golden standard. And the rest of the translations, although some of them are very close to the raw machine translation in quality, are post-edited more. So automatic post-editing adds more post-edits. And previously, we would assume that to be bad, because why would it go further than the reference? What is the deal here? Starting this year, we started looking at mostly the how the requirements are met and how people post-edit based on the raw machine translation versus what do they have left to post-edit after the automatic post-editing is done. And here, this is kind of where we hit, the diamond, the gold mine, whatever you call it. We here see on the right side the Intento OK results, and Intento OK is the metric that looks at if you're familiar with memoQ benchmark, which is the kind of the translation quality, the human translation quality benchmark. We use that to prompt Intento OK to find issues specific to the client or issues specific to the domain of the translation. And interestingly, when looking at how many major and critical errors are in the translation, raw machine translation is so far behind everything else. The post-edited versions of this machine translation using different LLMs obviously produce much less critical errors or major errors just because they know or they have learned what the post editors or what the client actually needs. We have the style guides, we have the terminology base, we have everything to improve the translation, and this is what automatic post editing does. So looking at the generic scores would definitely be useful in some cases, and it's quicker, simpler, faster. But if you actually want to achieve better quality with less time to post edit, I feel like looking at requirements is much more important. So now that I've explained, and here, sorry, I have to mention, if you want to get the copy of the report, please follow this, use this QR code. So now that I've mentioned what requirements are and why we look at them now more so than we look at generic translation, of course, I think it's a good place to kind of move on to why Jure and I are good people to talk about this, why we see this topic. In our case, as I mentioned, I am the lead engineer at Intento, and Intento is an innovation partner who can help you enforce those requirements in translation in as many languages as you want them to be enforced. We build those workflows that include translation, post editing, any kind of agents that you would need to make the translation better and to post edit less, and to have your reviewers and linguists not suffer from post editing the same content again and again and again. And Jure, would you be so kind as to talk a little bit about memoQ here?
Yes, and in this constellation, thank you, Daria. And in this constellation, memoQ would then serve as the, let's say, the infrastructure provider, or let's say a linguistic hub where the processes would then happen. So you would have the place where you would store your databases, your data, your translation memories, the glossaries, where you would set up the automation that would then eventually be used by Intento's services. So here, then I would like to talk a little bit about why we still, or why in the linguistic industry still we do post editing, why we do it, why can we do it in memoQ, and I'll show you also a glimpse into memoQ, how you can actually work with terminology. As Daria said, terminology is now the key pillar when it comes to consistency, and you'll see how easy it is with small steps to steer this huge monster of an LLM. And then we will go over to Amadeus's use case. So first, let me talk a little bit about why we actually still post edit. Can you just confirm that you can see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yep, all good.
So why do we post edit still? Because if we use machine translation or LLMs, there can still be the lack of context. So the LLM can still miss the gender, still miss plural, singular. So it's very important to provide it as much context as possible in the prompt or when we train the agents. Fluency, the LLMs or MTs can still miss that, especially if we don't instruct it. You know, you can address a person in a friendly tone. It can be a literal translation. The passive or active voice can easily be switched, so you need to be also aware of that. So if you don't fix it at the source, you'll have to do it in post. So it can still miss the translation. So the interesting thing is compared to MT, so LLMs and MT. So when we were doing translation based on raw MT, what you got in. So basically, if you had a bad source, then the translation was also bad, you know. But now with the LLM, there is a trick, you know. So if you have a bad source, the LLM can still, you know, polish it, you know, and on a surface it can look really nice, you know. But when you check it and when you compare it to the source, there may actually be no sense there, you know, so, or no connection. So you have to be careful with that. And AI can still hallucinate, you know, even though it got better, but it can still make up some paragraphs. If you're translating some legal content, you know, you have to be careful that all of a sudden you will not get any extra paragraphs that were not included in the contracts or things like that. Consistency, usage of terminology. So this one is key. So we'll definitely address that. And text, you know, there or markups, they can still be misplaced. And as Daria already also mentioned, we have done huge progress there, basically addressing all the topics here. So especially if you go with a custom approach, as we have here with, in this case, Amadeus, but also in general. So if you use a solution that is combining the technology with service and adaptation, then you'll really get great results. And memoQ in this constellation was acting as the platform for linguists. So here we can also mention why you would actually post edit in memoQ. So we give you the freedom to use different environments to work with. So I'll show you here just a glimpse into them. So first we have the desktop client. This is the product that we started with, and it has all the features that the linguists would need. So then we have the new editor. So this will be our future actually. And then we have also a specific in-country review editor, which is suitable for not necessarily linguists. Now we have an interesting situation where the linguistic process has just changed, So, and now because we can set up the processes so well, in a lot of cases so well, that we don't require, let's say, so much input to provide like a foundation for the editors to work with. Now we can do this very, very efficiently in a lot of cases with LLMs and customization, so that actually now the in-country reviewers or the subject matter experts can just go in and do the adaptation. So for them, we have a very user-friendly and simplified environment that they can use. So we have 3 options that you can choose from. I'll show you just the UI so that you can have an idea. So this is our desktop client, where you can see the source text, and then here you will enter the translation, you will correct it, and then you'll also see the preview here. And on the right side, you will see different suggestions coming from different sources and all the features here. So if you really want sophisticated tool for translation and revision, this is the place to go. And then we have the editor. As said, this is a browser-based solution. Modern one, so you can switch between modes, so you can have a dark and light mode. When we did the development of it, we took the desktop client as the fundament, but we didn't migrate all the features because the features also changed, or the requirements are changing. So we are adding features more concisely, and yes, here the aim is also quick adaptation, so that people can use it, and of course all the necessary features will be here. Source text, translations, preview, and all the features that will help you translate. So the resources, quality assurance checks, reference files can be seen here. So all of that. And this is the in-country review editor. It looks very much like the editor in the browser, but this one is even more simplified. So here, for instance, you can have control as the project manager, let's say, to say if the in-country review editors or the subject matter experts can do corrections directly, can comment, can use track changes. They will have connection to terminology, QA checks, and comments, but not much more, So because they don't usually need this. And the good thing is that whatever you do here, it will be fed back into the translation memory, and that was often the missing link, So you had to export the content, send it to the reviewers, and then they were working on it, but then you didn't get the content back or the corrections back, so you had an interrupted loop. So now this is connected to your translation memory that can be then used to steer other processes before. So let's say source quality improvements or even automatic post editing. So things like that. Okay, and once you have done the post editing or translation and post editing, you can then also retrieve this data that you can then use to train other models or agents or whatever you would need. You can extract the data manually directly in projects, where you can do, for instance, different comparisons. So you can measure the distance that was edited compared to the raw MT, or a reviewer versus translator, second reviewer versus first reviewer, or things like that. This can be done manually automatically through memoQ templates or, of course, via the API. And then use this data, of course. So now, the next topic that I would like to talk about is terminology. So terminology is really key, especially if you don't have a lot of data in translation memories. We can use really small glossaries to steer the translation and make the terminology consistent. And I'll show you here an example. So what we can do, for instance, if we don't have glossaries ready, but we need to translate something, usually we recommend that you start translating terminology so that at least that part will be consistent. And if you have the documents ready, you can, let's say here we have a couple of imported, you can in memoQ extract terminology. So for instance, here you can have ongoing sessions. I'll create here a new session. So we will not go into these details. If you will be interested in that, we have also a webinar that explains the terminology extraction. So I'll use the default settings, but what we will now get here is the list of potential candidates for terminology, which we can then sort based on length, let's say. And then we go through this list and we can say what is a term and what is, or let's say what is a term candidate and what is not. We can just simply accept terms, let's say like that. Let's say we will do it like that. No, this is no. And this one, let's say we want to keep this one. We can say this is Jahresbericht, something like that. And then you move on, so you can also add here translations. You can add here an example. So this is important so that you know the context. And now what you can do if you go through this list, you can immediately use this terminology in the ongoing project, but you can also export it somewhere in the Excel or in another database so that you can then feed other tools, which I'll also show you here. But not only in memoQ, but also, for instance, in Intento or any other environment. Okay, so we have here now terminology ready. But now, so this is one way of doing it. Of course, you can extract terminology and plenty other ways, but this is the built-in one that is available. And now let me show you how you can use terminology with an LLM. So the good thing about a joint solution of Intento and memoQ is that you get the best of both worlds. So in memoQ, you can get a lot of built-in features that include already AI, but with Intento, you can extend the usage because Intento can then customize the solution to your requirements and add more agents, add more processes. So really provide them the complete solution. I will show you now the built-in feature that is available and will show you how you can use the terminology and translation memory with an LLM. So what we will do for that, we'll open this document. And here we will see source text and then the preview. So that's it. And what we'll do now is we'll do raw translation. We'll do raw translation. I'll not prepare anything special, just run pre-translate. So as it is, we'll use machine translation. And now we got, let's say, the foundation. And what we will check now is this term, which is called annual report. And let's say here you can see that it was always translated Jahresbericht, 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 Jahresbericht. Fine. Okay, but let's say now we want to change this. We want to use a different term. And we will add this new term now to the glossary. You can do that quickly or easily by highlighting the term with a shortcut. We can now here add a new translation. And I'll use a word, a German word. You have to love German words. I'll show you later even a longer one. So that's fine. Okay, we'll add this. Okay. And now we will switch from the generic MT to our product, which is called AGT. So AGT uses the source text the context. In this case, it will be just the term, just one term, and of course the built-in prompt, and it will combine this into the translation. So what we will do now is we will run, let's say, only on those segments here, translation with AGT. And now we will expect that everywhere Geschäftsbericht will be used. We'll leave this part as it is. So now you can see that everything else stayed as was, but now Geschäftsbericht was used across the board. And here you can also see that we have here a plural form, and here it got also adapted. And that's one of the big pluses of an LLM, because LLM can adapt the plural forms and all the inflections and different variables. So this is really great. So you see, you enter the base form, and then the LLM will adapt it. So that's one example. And the second example that I can also show you is, in case you don't have a glossary, but you have at least some translations memory match, what we can also do is just use translation memories. So for instance, here we have two similar sentences, 10 and 11. You see that in both we have this part, which is the same. So the future of translation automation. And here we have these two translations. And now let's say we want to translate this part slightly differently. You see here this lovely long word, which we will then replace. There, we'll say the Zukunft der Übersetzung. I wonder how many of you study German. Okay, but just that. And now we could easily add this to the term base, but we will intentionally not. We will put it into the translation memory instead. You know, now we have here a match. It's a 72% match. But now if we will run AGT, we'll expect that this part, because it's the same, it will be picked up, but this part is new. So what we'll do now is we'll just translate this with AGT again. Keep on OK. And now we see that this part got adapted because we have it in the translation memory. So you see that it can be really easy to use your resources, even though there are not many. Of course, the more you have, the better. But even with small steps, you can get really great results. And with Intento's help, you can really scale this and deploy it into the whole environment, as we have together done it for Amadeus. And with that, I give the floor back to Daria. Thank you.
Thank you, Jure. First, it was really nice to see the presentation of memoQ, because I had to work quite a lot with it when working for Amadeus. It was really nice to see all the features. When it comes to Amadeus, first I want to mention something that Jure talked about, which is AGT. AGT is a great out-of-box approach when working with memoQ. And I think this is very useful when you actually work with kind of when you have specific terminology, when you need to use TMs, definitely 100%. For when it comes to Intento, as Jure thankfully mentioned, we do try to work with specific translation requirements and try to enforce them in our workflows that we create as a solution for our clients. And such solution we have created for Amadeus as well. So in case of Amadeus, I feel like the reason we need to talk about it today is kind of a use case is Amadeus used memoQ way before LLMs, way before we even came to workflows and multi-agents, and trying to integrate our solutions in different systems would have been kind of not helpful, because why would we try to move them towards different solutions if they already are used to this infrastructure they're working with, used to memoQ? So we first started with preparation of the workflows that Amadeus would need. As mentioned, terminology, as both for Amadeus and for most of the clients that we have, is an extremely important requirement. Terminology in both grammatical sense, because as we know, and as Jure mentioned as well, NMTs are usually not the best, currently not the best when working with grammar of the language. German is a great example, Spanish is a great example. Any Slavic languages would be a wonderful example here as well. Um, so just working with NMT was kind of not successful for Amadeus. They had a lot of trouble with grammar. They had even more trouble with domain specificity. I hate the word specificity, domain specificity, because as we also all know, terminology is not kind of one facet, it's multifaceted. So there is a lot of context that terminology would need to be properly applied. And again, NMTs weren't the best solution for Amadeus in this scenario. So first things first, we collected the requirements that Amadeus had for translation, terminology being one of them. They also work with very specific tone of voice for the data they translate. They work with very specific stylistic requirements for different languages. So we cannot just prepare one solution and just throw it in all the languages that they have. So we've collected the requirements. We've looked at the data they post-dated and extracted the requirements, kind of additional requirements for translation from this post-dated data as well. And it was probably one of the most simple ways to collect this information because everything was extracted from memoQ. We just look at what they posted and how they posted it, how far the translation is from what they want as ideal translation. We prepare this information to then kind of apply a new agent, the post-editing agent to their translation. We started out with Spanish, I believe, English into Spanish translation. Then we moved on to English into French and English into Italian. And then now we have about 8 to 9 languages that we're working with when it comes to post-editing agent. With Spanish, when we looked at the generic translation scores, again, edit distance, TER, we've seen quite a good improvement of quality, even with post-editing models, compared to the raw machine translation. But when looking at the same kind of setup done for French, the scores were not the best. So we didn't see any actual improvement when it comes to generic translation scores. So the next step was to actually put those workflows into production and have Amadeus reviewers or Amadeus linguists check out if they like it, if the solution is not as successful as we would have hoped it to be. And after a while, what was really interesting for us is that Amadeus, I believe, asked their reviewers, how much do you still post edit? How hard or how easy it is to post edit now with this workflow with the post editing agent? Interestingly, even though the generic scores again were not the best, they were basically the same with raw machine translation. The time that the reviewers now spent on translation, on post editing was about 60 to 70% less, which was awesome. That was the first time I learned about the word KPI, and it was really good to see that Amadeus believes the solution to be successful. We still have a long way to go because we're still looking at translation consistency, and we kind of try to apply as many fine-grained requirements now to their translation as we can, because terminology is a great requirement, tone of voice is a great requirement, formatting as well, but we need to look at more. And now I think this is kind of the best example of why doing that in memoQ is the easiest. This is an infrastructure that Amadeus is familiar with. Intento is a solution that they're familiar with. There is kind of a perfect opportunity to work with both without making their life harder, without making their reviewers' life harder. When we also work with those fine-grained requirements for Amadeus, we try to look at not one, but maybe multiple agents as well. So the multi-agent solutions that we prepare usually kind of, we do not just kind of throw an LLM and hope for the best. We check out multiple LLMs. We see what kind of post-edited better, what doesn't post-edit, what doesn't need to be post-edited. So all that is very kind of easily done with Intento and memoQ. And I feel like one of the most interesting use cases that we have with Amadeus as well is not just APE, not automatic post editing, but we also have something that Jure mentioned as well, source quality improvement. So for in case of Amadeus, at first, we've noted that their source sometimes lacked clarity, that machine translation needs desperately to translate good. The source was written by human, kind of for humans to work with at first, and we tried to not generalize, but kind of make it easier for machine translation or for LLMs, whichever solution they prefer, to be able to translate it the best way possible. At first, we did not know how we can kind of prepare this solution from English into English. This is not something that a lot of TMSs work with from the start, because we don't call it translation, because English to English cannot be translation. We call it language adaptation. And we try to adapt the solution first through us, just to prepare kind of this raw API solution. And then together with memoQ, we've managed to create this workflow inside of memoQ. We kind of, we've done kind of a very interesting thing. So we've translated the content from British English to American English to make it workable in memoQ. And it was really good to see how different solutions can be applied through one system. We do have kind of next steps when it comes to adapting requirements. As mentioned, one of the hardest requirements still to work with is consistency, or how the models look at context, because segment by segment translation is not kind of satisfactory for the clients anymore. But this is something again that can be done together with memoQ and inside of Intento to prepare the workflow that takes in the segments, translates the full document, and then separates them into segments for the clients to be able to post-it in memoQ. Overall, I feel like Intento and memoQ working together is a great example of a solution and infrastructure that are familiar to people. And as mentioned, and I will continue mentioning probably until the next year's State of Translation Automation report, the future of localization and the future of globalization, I feel like is not supposed to be about just picking the best engine, because that's kind of done already. We can do it very easily. It's not the hardest thing in the world to do. Now it's time to orchestrate different solutions and infrastructures together to make it not just the best generic engine, but to make it the best translation possible. And that would help post editors, that would help linguists, that would help all the reviewers of different clients, including Amadeus, so that the boring work does not need to be done by humans. They can do something better with their time than just doing the same post edits again and again and again. Yeah, I think, Jure, if you have any kind of words that you want to kind of conclude the conversation with before we go to Q&A section, you can do so now.
No, you summarized it quite well, and I think that with this final sentence about the future, yeah, this is something that I would agree with, and yeah, I'm optimistic about this future indeed. Yes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. By the way, optimism. No, I'm really optimistic about it as well. I wasn't right before, like right when LLMs have kind of come into the picture for translation.
Yeah.
I was kind of worried as to where we're moving, how hard it is, and the latencies and the prices. Everything was so unclear. But now that we can actually work around it and like make it the actual solution, actual workflow for localization, definitely agree with you. I'm very optimistic.
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. Jure, thank you so much. I think the poll is supposed to appear now before the Q&A section, but I'm afraid to say that, but I will say that it will appear now. Meanwhile, I will go through some of the questions that we have, and awesome. And one of the questions is when the recording will be sent out later. Yes, the recording is being prepared and will be sent out later to all the attendees and everybody who signed up for the webinar. All right. Let's see. I think we can start with the kind of the earliest question that we got. What are the plans from Jan Peñas? Peñas, I'm sorry. What are the plans to be able to send the whole document and TMs or TBS, TBS to Intento instead of per segment approach? I can kind of partially answer this question about our full text approach, and then maybe Yuri, you can add something else about the progress of memoQ. So when it comes to the whole document translation, currently inside of Intento, we have prepared a workflow that is already being used by different clients, and it can again be used inside of memoQ as well, where we, even if we're sent a set of segments from a document, we can still do full text translation. Again, thanks to the possibility to use different AI agent workflows. So we get the either the whole document throughout the translation portal inside of Intento, or a batch of segments from the whole document sent over to by TMS, such as memoQ. We put it together, we translate it, look at the context, be very careful about the terminology, again, different other requirements that the translation might have besides just the consistency of translation. And then we split it up by segments so that memoQ or any other TMS can properly process the translation that we got, and the client can see the kind of the consistent translation, but it's still segment by segment. Yura, what do you think about the whole document? How are you guys?
This is a very valid question and a very valid topic. Yes, indeed, the more context you give to the LLM, the better. And if you do segmentation, well, the context will be limited. So in that case, what we can do is we can change the segmentation rules. So that would be one approach. So maybe have no segmentations. Or in this constellation, maybe even better, there is the possibility to upload a document to memoQ, and then use what we call a pre-import script that can eventually send the content to, in this case, Intento, process it there, and then you will get it back and then segment it. So it would be also possible, So, but yes, a great question indeed.
Yep, definitely agree. And I feel like, again, one of the most important requirements right now, we kind of consider it not just standard requirements, but basic requirements for translation is consistency. Most people are mostly interested in contextual kind of preservation. So it's definitely awesome to see that memoQ can do it, Intento can do it. It's very different from, again, 10 years ago. All right, the next question we have is from Svetlana Svetova. What LLM AGT uses? Do you need additional subscription like OpenAI or Azure OpenAI?
Thank you, Svetlana. So the AGT currently uses OpenAI 4.0 Mini, but we just had the discussion that OpenAI will release the new model, which is supposed to be promising, but it's not excluded that we will not open this up to other LLMs. So currently it's OpenAI, and you don't need an additional subscription for that, or any other subscription. You subscribe to AGT and you get everything included.
Awesome. It's really comfortable to work with, definitely. All right, the next question that we have, I am so sorry, Ogba Al-Zut. Can you tell if one day we will reach a stage that there are agents that search for terminology and do other tasks that we do, and it takes a lot of time? Something like, I'm assuming, NA10 embedded inside memoQ and adapted for translators. I think I will give it over to Jure, but before that, I can kind of give an Intento approach to that as well. When it comes to kind of, I wouldn't say mundane tasks, but tasks that are kind of time consuming for linguists and for post editors or reviewers, searching for terminology, checking the tone of voice, et cetera, et cetera. This is something that when preparing the requirements and working with the setup, the requirements-based setup, Intento does fully on their side. So when we integrate inside of memoQ and we use the workflows inside of memoQ, terminology could have been already prepared by us, just confirmed with you because nobody knows your content better than you do. Same goes for different requirements that we can extract from your data. We just would need kind of a confirmation that what we found is definitely something that's important to you. But Jure, maybe you can have something to add when it comes to kind of additional things that can be done inside of
Yeah.
memoQ.
Yeah, so it's great. So and it outlines basically the constellation that we have here. So memoQ is in this case, let's say the technology in the middle. However, we develop certain things. So we analyze what needs to be done, and then we focus on a specific area. However, now with all the possibilities of coding and LLMs, there could be plenty of solutions that you may just imagine, so it can be endless, terminology agents, crawlers, QA fixers, source editors. I mean, theoretically they could be all agents,
Yeah,
so, and in this case, because we will not be able to cover simply everything, it's really great that you can rely on solutions like Intento provides and builds the agents or the solutions based on your requirements. So I would say uh, to an extent, yes, we will see those kind of solutions evolve, but if they will meet your requirements, or if your requirements will maybe change, it's maybe hard to tell. But yeah, I mean, it will be evolving for sure. So just
definitely agree with you.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Jure, and thank you, Opa. The next question we have is regarding AGT as well, from Jan. Can AGT work automatically while translators are post-editing or saving to while translators are post-editing, or can it save automatically to TMs so that they don't
Yeah,
need to pre-translate after every segment?
yeah. Thank you. And currently, it works on a pre-translation basis. So short
Mhm.
answer.
Perfect. All right, and I think we can answer one or two more questions, and then we will be able to wrap it. All right. One more question that we have is regarding AI agents. So how long does it take to create a specific AI agent? That is a wonderful question. And it kind of differs based on the client, the data that you work with, the requirements. I love the word requirements at this point. Usually when working with a client that has very specific requirements and they have kind of very specific data, not just kind of different domains inside, for example, pharmaceutical content or travel content. AI agent creation is kind of very simple and it's very fast. So we prepare several workflows for different languages in about a month. We're ready to kind of put it in production. Here we could provide a different example. So this year we presented at World with a client or about our client Strava, who needed their solution in 7 languages prepared in about a week and a half. So we did the machine translation agent for them for 7 language pairs in a very short period of time. It was kind of crazy. That's not something that we always do, but definitely it does not take too long if you already have everything specified. If you need the requirements extracted, as mentioned, for example, terminology-based prepared, or you don't have any TMs yet, you only have those translated documents, that would take slightly longer just because we will need to extract those requirements and we would need to kind of confer them with you as a client. But overall, workflow preparation now is very different and much faster than it was 2024, 2023, definitely. So it's pretty easy. All right. And Jure, I think we can do one last question that we can split up between you and I. So working with memoQ and prepared solutions at Intento sounds great for large enterprises like Amadeus, but we're a mid-sized company with maybe 5 to 10 language pairs. Is this approach realistic for us, or is it overkill? Where should we start? I think I was kind of talking just about Intento solution, and then Yuri can say how easy it is to work in memoQ.
Mm.
But it's a great question because definitely we do have some smaller kind of mid-sized company clients as well. Most of them usually work as LSPs, I would say. And when it comes to creating solutions for those clients and where to work with those solutions, TMS, like memoQ, is still a great way, but I will leave that to you. When it comes to creating the solution itself, um, you don't need to create a 10-step, very hardcore workflow for your translation. I would say that the first step should be choosing the language pairs that are most important to you, kind of the ones that you need in production the most, preparing the best possible translation solution for them, which would be kind of a translation agent, post-editing agent, etc. And then when everything's in production, you can fine-grainedly improve them however you need. So you don't need to kind of throw it all at once. You don't need to work on all 10 languages pairs at once. It's unrealistic even for some enterprise clients. But step by step, over some time, I think it should be easy. And Yura, please, if you could say a little bit about memoQ here.
Yeah, I can just complement that. So you can even start like small and then scale the solution. One other thing that we have also seen is that in case you want to translate the whole portfolio of the languages, you can pick the ones that would be, as Daria said, really critical, and then have like a flag there so that people know that they were properly handled, and the other ones you just leave a sign that they were just like handled with raw LLM or machine translation. But yeah, you can start. I would say, funny enough, sometimes even the small, let's say, small clients can have really big expectations or requirements when it comes to especially automation. So the size of the company doesn't necessarily relate to the complexity of the of the environment, and vice versa. It can also be the case. So I would say the best way is to talk to either Intento or memoQ, so that we analyze your requirements, and then that will then provide a joint solution that will basically be available to your budget and to your timeline, so that you can then pick when do you want to implement something. Yeah.
Yep. I definitely agree with you, Yuri. It's different clients have very different expectations and different requirements, but we can start small. We can always start
Yeah.
small.
Yeah.
All right. I think these are all the questions that we had time for. Now that we're done with the webinar, thank you everyone who attended. It was really nice to talk to you, Yura. Thank you so much for being with me here.
Thank
It
you,
was really
Daria.
nice.
Great
It was
host
really nice to
and
have
a
this conversation.
co-partner in crime.
You too. Thank you. All right. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. We're done with the webinar. Bye bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.